The Comsol VW Challenge action is brought to you by Comsol Wireless Solutions. A massive turnout for the opening round of the series was sure to guarantee great racing at the Phakisa Raceway for the Comsol VW Challenge. Over 30 cars and drivers throughout the classes made this one of the most successful entries to start a season. Plenty of new names and cars would also throw the questions over who would take first honours on the season.
We've got a lot of good names in Class A. There's no slouches in that field. So I think it's going to be competitive. Every race you're going to have to be completely on it, otherwise you're going to get left behind.
A great crowd puller for the opening round of the Comsol Volkswagen Challenge was reigning National Polo Cup champion Sheldon van der Linde, who showed up to compete in Class A and blow off his early season cobwebs.
This weekend we just came to play for the last time before I head to Europe for the European season. Obviously I'll be competing overseas this season, so yeah, last time to have a bit of fun in South Africa and obviously helping Devin Piazza Musa out with the car this weekend. It's really going well.
Who did Sheldon see as his competitors on the day?
Yeah, look, there's always a few good guys in Class A. Rory Atkinson, Tasman's joined us now. And Baldy, all of them are always up there, so for sure it's going to be a strong race today.
Tasman Pepper, in turn, brings with her a wealth of national and international skill to the Comsol VW Challenge and is bound to be a massive threat.
We had a bit of trouble at the beginning because we built a brand new car, so it's coming right, and Lee and my dad and Shane and everyone's put a lot of effort in to get us to this first race. And so far so good. I'm really enjoying it. The guys are really nice, and we'll see now when we go to the first race. I don't know how it's going to be. I don't know how these guys are on the track, but that's what we get to race and enjoy it. That's it.
Raining during a lot of the practice, but qualifying was a dry affair, and it would be the first test of the day for many of the competitors wanting the class wins. We'll go on board with Sheldon van der Linde as he confidently goes to work. Rory Atkinson, as defending champion, wanted a good showing, and in qualifying he managed a second row start in third. Darren Nathan is a big threat in the Class Bs, and he took fastest qualifier ahead of Nick Clark as the reigning Class B and overall champion. Andre Kallett showed flashes of brilliance in last season's events, and his third place qualifier will set him up nicely to run high. The Ruiz family, who at one time or another have had 3 members of the family on the grid, once again showed good form, with Luan taking the top spot in the Class Cs ahead of the Bat Lady Elke van Vledder, an agonizing 0.2 down just ahead of Graham Savage.
It was really good qualifying. We put in a really good lap, and I was really happy with the car, and yeah, it's where I wanted to be, on the front row of the grid. So I can't say anything went wrong with qualifying.
Confirming herself as a threat in the series for the first time of asking, Tasman Pepper takes overall pole with the fastest time and heads Class A. Nathan tops the Class B chart as expected, with Ruiz heading the Class Cs. Importantly, the time gaps are promising. Close early racing. 8 laps of racing would kick off the season good and proper at the Phakisa Raceway in Welkom, with 32 cars qualified and on the grid to go racing. With a lot of new drivers to the series, there were many unknowns that were about to be answered. With the staggered and split grids, this meant that for the first few laps at least, the classes weren't tripping over each other and could race their own races. In the Class A's pole sitter, Pepper took the whole shot into turn 1 with Atkinson and van der Linde wheel to wheel. Valdi Meinkies gives us front row seats of the action from his vantage point in 4th place. Atkinson's track position would give him the advantage approaching the next right-hander, but a little too hard on the brakes, and a loss of control gives the advantage back to van der Linde, who carries the momentum around the outside and goes about chasing down Pepper out front. The 3rd place battle was now about to be a close 4-car affair. Wayne Krause has earned his stripes in the series and made up one of the 4 cars in the split. He was battling with James Hurley and Valdi Meinkies just ahead. Hard on the brakes into what used to be known as Coca-Cola Corner, and Krause shows just how much of a handful these cars can be. Towards the end of the lap, and using the massive slipstream effect that can be utilized on the circuit, the passes can be set up on the back straight, heading down into the big sweeper. Meinkies shows us just how to get into the hook, and penultimate corner on the lap, van der Linde and Atkinson are now all over Pepper, with Pepper going defensive to cover her inside line. What was a right-hander became a left-hander, and it's a setup going on to the start-finish straight. Van der Linde positioned himself brilliantly to cross the line in first for the first time. Now heading on to lap number 2, the dynamic of the race would be completely different. Van der Linde leading and making the pass stick, confirming his position out front. But that pass slowed the pace down and allowed all the cars to bunch back up once again. Up the road from Meinke's point of view, the race has now begun as Van der Linde works to build his advantage over Pepper, and the Campos Transport Alpine Motors Polo is almost joined at the bumper with Atkinson in third place. But coming out of turn number 3 with the top 5 all over each other, there was a load of rubbish and carnage from other classes that got wild in their opening laps, and punches are a danger in these circumstances. Van der Linde was first to see this and therefore avoided the debris. Atkinson took advantage of the situation and launched an assault to get up and past Pepper, who was blinded by Van der Linde's line. Pepper now had to go on the big offensive and charge to try and get back through ahead of Atkinson. One small mistake, but Pepper was on the charge and was able to set up the pass down the back straight and come straight back at Atkinson to retake her second position. Slipstream City is what it's all about, and a real good line going into the sweep allowed Pepper to get back into second place with Van der Linde not too far ahead, so the massive advantage was not gained. But by the end of the last lap, the gap out front had grown, with Van der Linde taking a comfortable 2.3 second win over Pepper, who had to work hard in the last lap to fend off Atkinson, who wouldn't back down. Meinke's was in touch in fourth, but Kraus and Hurley had problems.
The first 4 cars were very evenly matched as such, so but the guys keep it clean. Finished fourth. I would have liked to be a little bit further up, but it just didn't get there, but second race, starting second on the grid, and it's great, looking forward to it. The VW Challenge has got a long and illustrious history. I've been going for about, I think it's 24 years now, and we bring together the normal oak in the street, some professionals that every now and again come and join us for a race or two, like Sheldon's done now, which is great for our championship, and we appreciate it.
Lots of wheel spin off the line had Van der Linde on the back foot straight away, this allowing Pepper to get straight through early on. Valdi had a good inside line, but Phakisa is always known to not give a good grip on the closest line to the pit wall, and it's off the racing line, so he was slipping and sliding. He gets blocked mid-corner by Van der Linde, and Hurley gets around the outside and ahead of Atkinson. Tasman Pepper wasn't wanting to make the same mistake that she did in race 1 and allow an early race pass, so she'd need to focus early on to stop the breakaway for Van der Linde. In qualifying, she was able to run 0.7 faster than the rest, so breakaway, if she could off front, was definitely on the cards. Kraus at the back of the pack was suffering straight line speed problems, but he was still close enough to watch Hurley go off farming between the 2 Uccini corners and made the pass on the starter pack co-driver onto the back straight. Hurley applied pressure and re-passed Kraus, who looked to simply not have the gas under his right foot. One of the moments of the race happened down at Giel's Kop when Van der Linde took more than his fair share of curb to put a pass on Pepper and see clear air for the first time in race 2. Pepper was clearly not happy about the move and set about reclaiming her position immediately. Her line into the final turn gave her track position into turn 1, and then the 2 top competitors set about eyeballing each other into turns 2 and 3 to set up the beginning of the next lap. 2 equally matched competitors were definitely starting to put on the show for the crowds. Pepper controlled the true racing line, but Van der Linde was holding a lot of outside momentum, which gave him the advantage on the corner exits, allowing him options of the outside line pass. Into turn number 3, inside line rules, and that was all Pepper's. Meinke's was third at this stage and must have been smiling in his helmet as he watched 2 of the best at each other's throats on the track. Pepper took a deep entry into the boot at turn 4 and gave Van der Linde no room for the pass he clearly wanted to make. At this point, Meinke's had his own problems, as Atkinson, who had a terrible start, was now up to speed and challenging for third position. much better run out of turn 5 gave the position to the Comsol man, and the reigning champion was once again sitting in third as he had been in race 1. Atkinson's pace showed that he may have a chance of closing in, but the lap board wasn't on his side. Hurley had also made up time, and after the halfway marker of the race was closing in. Heading into the last couple of corners of the race though, still the 2-horse race out front, and the clear air and advantage was in the hands of Pepper. She was going to be able to pull one back, and it would be 1 for 1. First race and first blood going to Van der Linde. Second race glory going to Pepper. An incredible dice for third place saw Atkinson come through late ahead of Meintjes, Hurley and Kraus.
We had the pace over Sheldon through the back end section, and he gained it back on the other side, and so we were going backwards, forwards, and we had a really nice dice again, and it was nice to have a nice clean race with him again, and we had a really good weekend.
After the break, we're back with more Comsol VW Challenge racing action from Phakisa. With Class B as the class that brings the most competitors, it stands to reason that it often delivers the best and closest racing. Here at the opening rounds, a full grid of 14 cars arrived to do battle. We caught up with Class B frontrunner Elna Cruiser to talk VW Comsol Challenge.
Well, we've actually been fortunate with VW Challenge. We've had ladies in the race for quite a while. I think we normally have 4 or 5 ladies racing. So it's good to have that many interested in racing. So in terms of racing, I think this is one of the cheapest series to race because of the fact that things are relatively standard. You can buy spares off the rack. Motorsports, Volkswagen Motorsport also gives us good prices, and as I said, the tyres are all standard.
The past few seasons have seen the top 2 classes, that of the Class A and Bs, become predominantly polo entered, with the Cs being made up of some of the polos, but also the older Golf 1s and 2s. 2016 sees the most complete grid yet, with all of As and Bs fully poloed up. Even though the 3 classes that make up the Comsol VW Challenge race at the same time, they run a staggered split grid, meaning that once the Class A's are at turn 1, then the Bs are under starters' orders. This means that on a big track like Phakisa, they can practically run their own races without ever seeing each other. Jacques Smith drops the hammer and gives us the perfect start to see how it's done. He improved immediately from his 5th place qualifier to slot up into 3rd place and go after the top 2 of Nathan and Clark running 1 and 2. Millet Stewart, who cut his teeth on open wheels, got a great gift just before the back straight when Andre Kalitz got loose and lost his position. This meant that he was going to be joining the pack at the sharp end of the stick. The guys sitting around about 4th and 5th place make up a massively deep talent pool, and it gets a little bit busy. Jacques Smith clearly fancied his chances and carried his momentum from the stellar start forward to start challenging on Clark for 2nd place. A big dive up the inside into turn 1 cemented the pass, and the job was now to chase down on Nathan, who held around a 2nd advantage out front. Class B's freight train that steamed down the back straight once again proved how deep that talent pool is and just how evenly matched the vehicles and drivers actually are. Pushing hard down the back straight, Smith looked to be having problems on his Hydra Arc Polo and lost a place far too easily to Clark. It was starting to look like Smith's luck had ran out, and he got closed rapidly by the chasing pack. Nathan wasn't breaking away though, and the Class B rules were keeping things nice and close to the top. The top 5 were working together to leave the rest behind, and Graham Gammy, along with Brad Hall, were working to go with them and stay in the top half of the field. By lap 6 of 8 though, the bungee had snapped, leaving just the top 2 to run the big numbers out front. Reigning champion Nick Clark was letting Darren Nathan do all the hard work out front and lead the race, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. Jacques Smith was still in the fight for 3rd, incredibly, but wasn't having it all his way, as he now had the family pairing of Dane and Millet Stewart trying to wrestle the position away from him. Dane Stewart put the final nail in the coffin for Smith as he squeezed through and sent Smith back to 5th and into the clutches of Hall. Smith was now free-falling down the order and would need to put in overtime to hang onto his qualifying position of 5th. The extra effort was gonna have to be made purely because Everyone was now queued up, and it seemed like the runners sitting outside of the top 5 had now found their extra bit of pace. Hall was definitely the danger man, clipping curbs and finding a little bit of extra speed and pace down the back straight. Jacques Smith was working through the problems on his car just to try and stay in the mix, but Hall was extremely aggressive. The penultimate lap was a carbon copy of the previous time, but time was now running out for Clark to make his move. It would have to be a perfect pass to make it count against Nathan. Meanwhile, the fight for third in many ways had only just begun. The Stewart pairing of Millet and Dane were controlling third and fourth for now, but Smith was somehow still in it with Brad Hall and now Michael Harris, the newbie, in tow. Gammy had some problems late in the race that saw him park it. Dane was fancying a crack at his brother for third position and had a long, hard look through the sweep. There wasn't much time to play around though, as Hall, Smith and Harris were now lined up and good to go. Too late in the race though, the flag was out and so it was done and dusted. Nathan took the win by the narrowest of margins over Clark, with Dane Stewart taking the third place epic battle away from his brother by 0.1. Brad Hall knocking Jacques Smith out of the top 5.
I didn't think I would have qualified on pole. I didn't have the fiercest qualifying. There was a lot of traffic, but managed to just get it against Nick Clark. The two of us are very, very close, and race one proved to be the same. We were very, very close throughout the race. He drove a very good race. He kept me honest. It wasn't easy, I'll be honest. But yeah, very good race.
We pick up on the action from race 2, when Nathan was once again leading from the front and looking to be the first driver in the Comsol VW Challenge to have the perfect start to the season, taking pole and hopefully 2 race wins. Brad Hall and the Stewart pairing were looking well together early on and not slowing each other down too much to go after that third place. This time it was Hall that looked the strongest and made his intentions known at turn 3 on lap 2 to put his nose ahead. At the same time, Francois Van Zyl went for a wild move that put the frighteners on Millet when he outbraked himself. This put Millet offline and dropped him off the pace for the leading bunch. Van Zyl would have something to answer to later on in the race. Van Zyl now controlled the inside ground going into the toe of the boot, but Stewart was going to try and rail around the outside, hold that momentum, but he shows us the perfect offline shot and all that wheel work. No grip on the front tires offline. Phakisa, as wide as it is, often known as a one-line track. Still, he was forcing Van Zyl out wide as hard as he could. Out front, the leading pair of Nathan and Clark had stretched their gap early on, and it was a matter of waiting till the laps ticked off. Dane Stewart was now only up against one man for the final podium, and he didn't want to lose his chance of third place overall in the day. Hall was looking aggressive in race 2 though, and the fight was not going to be an easy one. Brother Millet was still in recovery mode behind after the Van Zyl incident. While the leaders were about to finish yet another lap, it was all about Nathan and Clark playing cat and mouse. They were definitely just sizing each other up and trying to figure things out. Dane Stewart and Brad Hall were definitely putting on a show. This time around though, Stewart fancied his chances of a line up the inside. Millet was on the comeback and had a front row seat of the dive up the inside where his brother forced Hall out wide. Unfortunately though, it may have been a lack of experience because Hall still carried the momentum around the outside and was looking to hold his line. Nathan was still controlling the high ground out front, making Clark work for it. Nathan had upped the pace and found a few tenths in reserve, so could possibly break away and leave the gap to Clark this time around. Nathan was holding the fastest lap from race 1 also, so the points were definitely adding up. Hall and Dane Stewart were clearly holding each other up, as Millet Stewart and Francois Van Zyl, his old combatant, had closed up to occupy the same half second. After a safety car situation lost 3 laps of racing and brought everyone back together, it was going to be a wild last 2 laps for all involved. It was a wild ride for Lindsay Kleur, pushing a little too hard on the green flag, and the Mirage Polo got away from her, but mercifully no other cars were collected in the incident. Nathan had jumped out to an instant 3-car lead, whilst the Brad Hall and Stewart squared battle was still covered by a small handkerchief. The third place battle was going to be the one to watch. At the flag though, Nathan had done it once again to achieve a clean scorecard. Clarkey was in second. Paul beat Dane Stewart to the line, but with only 0.1 between them, and this still gave Stewart the third on the day.
Car was good. The competition is amazing. I'd like to thank CTS for continued sponsorship, and yeah, good race.
As the cheapest form of racing in the Comsol Volkswagen Challenge or almost any other tin-top formula in South Africa, the Class C category's appeal is clear. Many of the now Class A and B racers started at this level and worked their way up. We caught up with John Johnston to explain the restrictions on the class.
There's an A, B and a C. Class C would be the slower of the three classes, and there's some restrictions on tyres and suspension. It's a new car that we developed. It will be the first time that it's on the track today. It's never been tested before, so we're under a bit of pressure, but hopefully it will come around. I think the tyre is absolutely a cost-saving effort, and I think that will make the championship worthwhile.
The second biggest class or grid on the Comsol VW Challenge, the Class C's boasted an 11-driver entry for the opening round of the championship, with the top 7 cars qualifying on the same second. Again, proving how closely matched the drivers and vehicles are. Sean Krause, who qualified 6th, put the moves on Chris Dale into turn 1 after a not-so-good getaway from the line. An early season repair ball for both of them. Krause's pace would see him recover quickly, only to get involved in more drama at turn 4, but just about get away with it this time. Class C very closely bunched, always creating plenty of drama. The black 23 of Gareth Lyke, with his rookie tape waving out the track telling other drivers of his newbie status, was still finding his feet and the tarmac. Krause pressured him for the pass. Through the Uccini setting up onto the back straight, Krause had the better line up the inside, and no doubt down the end of the sweeper, the rookie would be backing out of this one. The top qualifiers of Luan Roos, Alka Van Vletter and Graham Savage had broken away from the chasing field and were very evenly matched, even with Savage climbing the curbs to try and pass Van Vletter. The chase group for now was made up of Simon Need and John Johnson, with Krause and Philip Cruiser closing in fast. Aggressive early race driving saw Krause stuck outside the top 5, but a strong recovery and more aggressive moves saw him scythe his way up the order with some ease. Although the pass on Johnson was made that much easier due to a puncher on the newly developed circular group car. Down the back straight, Johnson just faded to the back, and it looked like a turbo had been strapped to Krause's car as he just flew up the order. Out front, Roos hadn't been able to break away from the 2 Golfs, but it didn't matter as the flag was unfurled, ready and waiting. Van Vletter got the 2 spot, with Savage making it 2 Golf 1s in the top 3, and Apollo taking the win. Krause came on for 4th.
I had the bad side of the grid on the rubber, but I got a good start and I led the race. Me and Alka and Graham Savage had a good race. We were second ahead of all the other cars in the class, and we finished up first.
For race 2, in the early stages at least, there was a very different look and feel as the Golf 1 in the colours of Goldwagen, Johannesburg, CBD and Wynberg, with Graham Savage at the wheel, took the lead at turn 1. The older Golfs often struggle for straight line pace at Phakisa due to the lack of aerodynamics, so there's always an unspoken rivalry between the older and newer shapes, and bragging rights are more than up for grabs at every race. Van Vletter in the second Golf 1 held 3rd, but needed to get a move on if she wanted to stand a chance of achieving a 2nd overall come the end of the day. John Johnston and Sean Krause had a good start as they sat 4th and 5th. Krause was one to watch as his late race pace in the first heat showed he had a strong car underneath him. Krause had some interesting line choices, and it was clear that he wanted to get through sooner rather than later. Johnston was going to be the first target, but Krause looked like he had a bit of a loose car underneath him today. At the end of lap 1, a bit of a strange scenario. Some of the slower Class B cars had definitely had their problems out on the track. You could see some of the damage that had slowed them down. This meant that the front of the Class Cs were going to be right in the mix. Philip Cruiser had braking problems that would force him to retire, not completing 1 lap. Whilst pushing to stay with the early race pace of leader Savage, Roos pushed the Polo too hard into turn 1 and got into a tank slapper. Van Vletter was able to stay just clear of being collected, very gratefully taking over second place. The Martini Polo seemed like it had a mind of its own, as Roos struggled to bring it back in line, losing a load of positions and dropping him out of the top 4. Johnston was now up to third place, with Danger Man Kraus stalking along in his shadow in fourth. Stuart Mack and the Jumbo Golf were also in with a shout, coming off his great 6th place finish in race 1. Kraus was very strong at the end of the back straight heading into the sweep. He closed in on Johnson, who was really battling with his newly developed car, and the gap opened enough for Kraus to slide through under the almost out of control Johnston. He could now go after Van Vletter and that second place. Savage had done a brilliant job to use the tail enders of the faster Class Bs to distance himself from the chasing Van Vletter and Kraus. Johnston and Roos were battling through their handling problems, clearly their setup going the wrong way for race number 2. It was Savage who drove a sublime race to take his first win of the season though, ahead of Van Vletter and Kraus. Roos got around Johnston on the last lap and gathered valuable points.
Race 2 I started in third place. Graham was in the lead and Luan in front of me. Luan made a mistake in turn 1, so I could get past him and then tried to catch Luan. But unfortunately with the safety car situation, a lot of other Class B cars came ahead of me.
All of this Comsol VW Challenge racing action was proudly brought to you by Comsol and their associate sponsors.